Our next speaker joining us here is the Managing Director of AbacusBio. Anna Campbell has a PhD in plant biotechnology, has worked throughout the Asia Pacific on plant and animal breeding programs, and she is the Managing Director of AbacusBio. She's also the Director of Otago Innovation Limited and Genomics Aotearoa. So, ladies and gents, please welcome Anna Campbell.
Nō reira, Greg. Hi all, I want to congratulate the organisers for a fantastic couple of days. The energy's been pretty mind-blowing, and as a new entrant to this industry, you know, recognising, as Manu and Panapa did earlier, that we stand on the platform that others have built for us, and what a platform they've built, and what a time to springboard off that platform. It's a pretty exciting times. So thinking about, I guess, you know, there's a lot of media at the moment. There's a new entrance into the market. Canada's changing legislations. US are going gangbusters. Everyone's calling it a green rush. What does that mean for us as New Zealand producers? And just in the last couple of weeks, the first marijuana-derived drug's been approved at an FDA level, and numbers are booming in terms of medical growers, but actually also recreational growers in those areas where that's allowed. The flip side of that, like any industry, is that where there are ups and new entrants, there are also downs. And this graph just demonstrates, firstly, the volatility in the cannabis market, but also that it is slowly trending down. And a colleague of mine who works in the cannabis industry in the States told me recently, in the state that he's in, that the cannabis price has dropped 60% in 60 days. So, you know, those of us who have ever worked in any other kind of agricultural industry, whether it be wheat, whether it be barley, whether it be dairy, whether it be beef and lamb, know that this is pretty typical for any kind of industry, especially when that industry becomes commoditised. And that really is the challenge for us, is that we can look at, you know, we are slightly late entering this industry. That's a disadvantage in some ways, but it's also a real advantage in that we can look at what else is being done in other states and countries and pick and choose what we want to do. I really like this quote from Bruce Linton, who's the CEO of Canada's largest medical cannabis company, Canopy Growth. By 2020 or 2021, there will be too much cannabis produced. If I'm still selling primarily an ingredient, I've completely dropped the ball. You want to transform it. And I don't think there would be an industry in New Zealand that we would believe anything different in terms of how we should go to market. But I think particularly for this industry, for us. So with thinking about that, I think it's really interesting to look at the other industries in New Zealand and ask ourselves, what does good look like? And I think it's really easy also to shoot arrows at other industries and point out all the things they're doing not so well. For example, we might look at Fonterra and say only maybe less than 10% of their product is really value add and the rest is sold as commodity. Yet Fonterra do scale extremely well. They have great health and safety and food safety within their plants. And what pieces of that industry could we take into a new medical cannabis industry? Similarly, Zespri, I think they've done some fantastic things around plant variety rights and the gold kiwi, some fantastic plant breeding work to get out of the PSA scramble. So again, how do we take the pieces out of that industry that we want and build the ultimate industry for New Zealand as a medical cannabis industry right from the start? That's our challenge. So I'm really thinking about this, you know, what does a really good value chain for medical cannabis look like? And I'm a plant breeder by trade, but also have spent a lot of time in animal genetics, and so I'm very comfortable, I guess, at the start of the value chain and really understanding how do we make use of and develop IP around that starting product. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that in a moment. But there really is opportunity around some of the many compounds within cannabis to make some unique products. We also obviously have cultivation, and what does that look like for New Zealand in terms of medical cannabis. And it's likely that because of security reasons that a good proportion of that will be indoor grown, especially initially, depending on whether we can move to CBD or high CBD only type cultivars. Building that into the program. Something that I think is really, really interesting to think about is New Zealand has high UV light, And cannabinoids are produced as secondary metabolites in plants, which means that they're actually produced as a defence mechanism for insects, and also UV light will stimulate greater production of these types of secondary metabolites. So it's really interesting thinking about what have we developed in New Zealand along these many years of breeding that we've been doing, possibly illegally. I think that's, as a plant geneticist, I'm very interested in that. But also a very important part of the value chain is obviously the processing and testing, which we just heard a bit about. Really interestingly, in California at the moment, there's a really considerable bottleneck at the testing level, and that growers can't get product to market because there's only 2 credited testing laboratories. So that's something as a New Zealand industry, we need to make sure we've got all our ducks in a row in terms of all the pieces of that supply chain. And this is not something that one company can do, it's not something just the government can do, it's something as an industry that we've got to pull together. And finally, and most importantly, and so I should really start at this piece of the value chain, is the end user, whether that be a healthy person trying to maintain their health or a patient with a disease that we need to target that right outcome for. Really importantly, underpinning that linkage is how we use data throughout that value chain, because to me the ultimate is if that end user is able to dial up that very right product for them that's been bred and cultivated in the right manner, and I'll talk about that a little bit more later. So just going back now to the plant, the first step for us to do in New Zealand is to really understand what we have in terms of genetics and where does it fit internationally. As I did say before, we have had people breeding this plant for many years in New Zealand, and I do hope that once legislation is through in terms of us being able to start breeding these types of plants for medical cannabis, that we are able to access that germplasm, because there will be some really, really interesting things that people have done, and some of those plants may have adapted to our unique environmental conditions, and that in a funny way is a New Zealand IP that we've already got sitting there. So we really must be able to access what we've already developed. And also there may be geographic effects depending on where various plants have been grown in the country. Also, yeah, really understanding how those chemotypes might match to the diseases. So the first step would be to map, and this picture on your left is a genetic population out of Iran cannabis, and what they've done is map the cultivars that they have according to the cannabinoids, and so then you can see the degree of relatedness, and then you can start to design crosses to start increasing some cannabinoids over other cannabinoids, for example. Similarly, terpenes, so there's over 140 cannabinoids that have been found, and if you think about what we've done in terms of our hobby breeding, we have selected very, very intensely, probably for THC. So it would be really, really interesting to have a greater understanding of some of these other compounds. And similarly, we may be able to create selection pressure in our breeding program that allows us to select for greater expression of other cannabinoids and terpenes. I think this is probably the most critical slide in my presentation. This is what really excites me, I guess, as a plant breeder, in that if we get really focused on just CBD, there is potential for it to be synthetically derived. There's a potential for it to become commoditized in US or China or Canada. So there's a really big opportunity for us to think more about this product as a whole plant product. Now, whether that's in an oil form, that doesn't matter, but thinking about it in terms of these plant compounds travel together. And if you have, for example, I've just read some medical literature where they were saying that the presence of high CBD in one particular disease actually lessened the negative effects of the high THC in terms of the negative side effects. So this coupling or this entourage effect is really, really important for us to think about in terms of our end products, but also our plant breeding and our cultivation programs. The positive is that if we have an entourage effect, then it's really hard to replicate synthetically. But the negative side of that is it's also really hard to generate consistent product. And these are the challenges we'll have going forward. But to me, this is really exciting. Just really my last couple of slides, I want to finish on thinking, I guess, going back to that bigger picture again and talking about what does the ultimate value chain look like. And I've talked to quite a few people this last couple of days about this idea that food and medicine are converging. So when we are thinking about food as a preventative medicine, and when we think about this cannabis plant, it's an opportunity to really offer a product or a whole layer of layers of products that offer different opportunities across that personalised medicine route. And when you think of, I guess, data and the part that it plays, we've now got the ability to get our own genome, records of our own genome very quickly. There's a really extraordinary company which I'd urge you to check out called Habit Personalised Food. And you can go on to this US San Francisco company and you can get your blood analysed through various genetic markers. To be honest, some of the science behind it is a little bit sketchy, but however, they are selling. And you can it'll give you an idea of what kind of diseases you might be up for later in life, and then you can get diet advice accordingly. So food, and I'm sure they'll start to develop food packages. So you can see how this kind of personalised value chain and this preventative medicine is all starting to come together. And then on top of that, I wear a Fitbit. I don't know if Michael's still in the audience, but when I think about what that Fitbit collects, I send, when I tapped into my phone to log on to the Fitbit, I send this company in the States all this information about myself, my age, my weight, how many times I go to the toilet at night, and how many steps I make during the day. I was quite proud that I did 24,000 steps on the dance floor in Singapore after a few cocktails, and I was thinking, as Michael talked earlier, I wonder if I'd added hemp seed into that, if I could have doubled that kind of number. It might be an interesting experiment. But the point really of going there is, I really don't want to dance in front of you, but I think think about what we will be wearing in future. The Fitbit is pretty rudimentary. We'll be wearing sensors in our bloods that tell us what we can eat when we open the fridge. The opportunity is for New Zealander, in terms of thinking about the ultimate value chain, is to design this incredible suite of products that our consumers are able to, through their data, tap into what is best for them. And it sounds a bit of a pipe dream, but we've got to start somewhere. And I think hearing Mac and some of the people speak earlier, we've got to believe, really, and everyone starts from somewhere. So just quickly to wrap up, what's really excited me in terms of just starting to really get into this medical cannabis space is we do have incredible people here in New Zealand in terms of incredible farmers, scientists in our universities, good medical schools, good Crown research departments, and also some really good private companies in terms of starting to put this value chain together. We've got it all here, we've just got to get going. And finally, I just really want to finish by emphasising what I think good looks like. And phase one is really structured and coordinated R&D programs, which include plant breeding and cultivation work, chemical analyses and that base medical research, those phase one type trials. Stage two is really delivering value for New Zealanders, so affordable product, consistent, high quality and fit for purpose. And the ultimate is also to add the icing on the cake, is to develop that super premium product for the international market, developing niche products for human disease but also human wellness, and really selling that New Zealand factor with all the traceability and so forth that goes with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed to Anna Campbell, Managing Director of AbacusBio, joining us here today as part of our conference. We have, as you can see, a small gift for Anna as well. Thank you very, very much indeed. I did a quick check there to see if we did have any Q&A there for you, Anna, but I believe, unfortunately, time is really of our... time, what can I say?